The emergency alert blared through Medical Station Horizon just as Dr. Marcus Reed finished his third cup of synthetic coffee. The station's AI's voice carried an unusual note of urgency. Priority 1 medical emergency in Docking Bay 7. Non-human patient. Severe trauma. All qualified personnel report immediately. Marcus was already moving, his worn boots carrying him through the station's curved corridors with practiced efficiency. A small team of nurses and medical technicians fell in behind him, their footsteps echoing off the sterile walls. 6 months into humanity's first deep space medical station, and they'd seen their share of alien patients, but Priority 1 calls were rare. The docking bay doors parted to reveal organized chaos. A massive vessel, easily 3 times the size of standard emergency shuttles, had somehow squeezed into the bay. Its hull bore the distinctive crystalline patterns of an Axiom warship, a sight that made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. The Axiom were legendary warriors, their bodies enhanced by crystalline growths that made them nearly indestructible. They didn't get injured. They certainly didn't seek help from other species. Yet there one lay, sprawled across the deck plating, body crackling with failing bioenergy. The crystalline formations that typically covered Axiom warriors in an impenetrable armor were shattered, exposing vulnerable flesh beneath. 3 other Axiom warriors stood guard, their own crystals pulsing with agitated energy patterns. "Step aside," Marcus called out, surprised by the steadiness in his voice. "I'm Dr. Reed, Chief Trauma Surgeon of this station." The largest warrior turned, crystalline facets catching the emergency lights. "You are, small," the translator rendered in flat tones. "Our brother requires aid. Our healers cannot help. The crystal song fails." Marcus was already scanning the injured warrior, his augmented reality display filling with vital signs he'd only ever seen in xenobiology textbooks. "The crystal formations are rejecting his tissue," he muttered, mind racing through possible treatments. "Massive autoimmune response. We need to get him to surgery 1 now." "You cannot move him," another warrior rumbled. "The crystal song is all that keeps him alive." Marcus met the warrior's crystalline gaze. "Your brother is dying. Those crystals you rely on. They're killing him. His body is fighting them like an infection. I can save him, but not here, not on the deck. You came to us for help. Let me give it." A moment of tension stretched between them, broken only by the wounded warrior's labored breathing. Finally, the leader stepped back. "If he dies." "He won't," Marcus promised, already gesturing for his team to bring the hover stretcher. "But I need to know, how did this happen?" Axiom warriors are supposed to be practically invulnerable. As they rushed through the corridors, the leader kept pace, crystal formations shifting in what Marcus read as agitation. "We encountered something. A spatial anomaly. It disrupted the crystal song, caused massive feedback. Only Brother Kara's was affected directly, but his formations began to fragment immediately." The surgical bay doors hissed open, equipment already powering up as Marcus's neural link communicated the situation. "I need to do something unprecedented," he announced, both to his team and the Axiom warriors. "We have to remove all the damaged crystal formations before they cause complete systemic failure." "Remove?" The word seemed to physically pain the warriors. "The crystals are our strength, our identity. They're also killing him right now," Marcus countered, already prepping surgical tools. "But I think I can save both your brother and your traditions. Nurse Chen, get me the experimental nanocrystalline substrate from Lab 3. The one we've been developing for reconstructive surgery." Understanding dawned in Chen's eyes as she rushed to comply. Marcus turned back to the warriors. "I can't save the original formations, they're too far gone. But I can provide a foundation for new crystal growth, compatible with his biology. It's experimental, but you would give him a new crystal song." The leader's own formations flickered with interest. "Something like that," Marcus agreed, hands flying over the surgical controls. But I need your trust. And I need you to wait outside. Medical Bay is about to become a sterile field. For a moment, he thought they might refuse. Then, with ceremonial precision, each warrior touched a crystal formation to their fallen brothers before filing out. The leader paused at the door. His name is Karas. Save him, small doctor. Show us what human healing can do. The next 6 hours were the most intense of Marcus's career. Removing the dying crystal formations required precision he'd never attempted before. Each piece had to be carefully separated without disrupting the underlying biological processes that made Axiom warriors so remarkable. The nanocrystalline substrate, originally designed for human bone reconstruction, had to be completely recalibrated on the fly. But it worked. As Marcus placed the last substrate node, new crystal formations were already beginning to grow, their pattern different from the originals but humming with healthy energy. Karas's vital signs stabilized, his body accepting the new formations as if they'd always been there. When Marcus finally emerged from surgery, exhausted but triumphant, he found not just the 3 warriors waiting, but a dozen more. News, it seemed, traveled fast. The leader stepped forward, crystal formations bright with what Marcus was learning to read as emotion. Brother Karas lives. We feel his new crystal song. It is, different, but strong. The warrior's next words would change galactic medicine forever. Tell us, Dr. Reed, what else can human healing do? Marcus looked at the gathered warriors, thinking of all the possibilities, all the ways human medical science could complement and enhance the biological marvels of other species. Why don't we find out together? As he headed back to his office to file what would surely be an interesting report, Marcus couldn't help but smile. Humanity had just made its mark on galactic medicine, not through force or technical superiority, but through the simple, powerful act of healing. The real work, he suspected, was just beginning. Word spread through the galactic community like a shockwave. Within weeks of Karas's successful surgery, Medical Station Horizon was fielding requests from species Dr. Marcus Reed hadn't even known existed. The Axiom warriors, once considered the most isolated and technologically self-sufficient species in known space, had become unofficial ambassadors for human medical expertise. Another myriad ship requesting emergency docking clearance, Station AI announced, interrupting Marcus's attempt at breakfast. Third one this week. Marcus sighed, pushing away his half-eaten meal. The myriad, a species of collective consciousness beings who shared a distributed nervous system, had been particularly interested in human medical techniques since word got out that the station had successfully treated semiconductor-based life forms. Tell them to proceed to Bay 4, he replied, already heading to the medical bay. And get Dr. Zhang to assist. She's been studying their neural networking patterns. The corridors of Horizon had changed dramatically in the past 3 months. Where once they'd been nearly empty, now they teemed with life forms of all descriptions. Medical personnel from a dozen species worked alongside human doctors, some officially sanctioned by their governments, others here in secret to learn what they could. The myriad patient was a cluster of crystalline nodes, their usual pristine geometric patterns disrupted by what looked like information corruption, the equivalent of a stroke in their species. As Marcus began preliminary scans, he noticed an older myriad healer hovering nearby, their nodes flickering with what he'd learned to recognize as disapproval. Traditional methods dictate separation and replacement of corrupted nodes, the healer communicated through their translator. This is the way it has always been. Marcus continued his scans, already forming a treatment plan. With respect, separation causes trauma to the shared neural network. We've developed a way to repair corrupted nodes in situ, using targeted quantum recalibration. The recovery time is faster, and there's no loss of shared memories. The healer's nodes pulsed rapidly, their version of agitation. Our methods have served for 10,000 cycles. Who are humans to change this? Before Marcus could respond, another voice joined the conversation. The humans saved my crystal song when our own healers could not. Kara stepped into view, his new crystal formations gleaming. The Axiom warrior had taken to spending time on the station, observing and, more surprisingly, learning. Sometimes the old ways must yield to new wisdom. The myriad healer's nodes dimmed slightly, a sign of consideration. Proceed, they finally communicated. We will observe. Hours later, as the myriad patient's nodes realigned with healthy geometric patterns, Marcus found himself in his office with an unexpected gathering. Kara stood near the door, while the myriad healer's nodes hovered in a pattern Marcus was learning to read as thoughtful. They were joined by representatives from 3 other species, including a Volarch energy being contained in a specialized environmental field. Your methods are unorthodox, the Volarch pulsed, their energy patterns shifting in complex ways. You do not simply replace damaged parts or excise problems. You adapt. Heal. It is not our way. But it works, Kara's interjected, crystal formations brightening. My new crystal song is stronger than before, yet still uniquely mine. The humans understand something we have forgotten, that healing need not mean erasing what was damaged. The myriad healers' nodes arranged themselves in a formal pattern. We have observed 17 procedures now. Each time, the human doctors seek to preserve and repair rather than replace. It is efficient. Elegant. Yet many of our people resist such changes. Marcus leaned back in his chair, choosing his words carefully. Change is never easy, especially when it comes to healing traditions that have served your people for generations. We're not here to replace your methods, but to offer alternatives, to combine our knowledge with yours. Some say humans are too young a species to teach others healing, the Volarch pulsed. That your methods are untested by time. Perhaps it is because we are young that we can see new possibilities, Marcus replied. We've had to learn and adapt quickly as a species. Every human medical advancement came from being willing to try new approaches while respecting the wisdom of the past. The conversation was interrupted by another emergency alert. A Kethera ship, badly damaged by an unknown phenomenon, was approaching the station. Multiple casualties, severe radiation exposure, critical systems failing. As Marcus rushed to respond, he realized his visitors were following. We will assist, the myriad healer announced, their nodes already reconfiguring for medical functions. Our neural networks can help stabilize their synaptic patterns. The crystal song can shield against radiation, Kara's added, falling into step. The Volarch's energy field hummed. We understand radiation better than most. Perhaps it is time we learn to heal together. As they hurried to the emergency bay, Marcus felt a surge of hope. This was what he'd dreamed of when he'd first accepted the posting to Horizon, not just humans helping other species, but all species learning to combine their knowledge, their abilities, their very different approaches to healing. The real breakthrough wasn't just in the medical techniques they were developing. It was in the barriers breaking down between species, in the ancient healers willing to learn alongside human doctors, in the warriors who stayed to understand the healing they'd received. As the emergency teams assembled, human and alien working in seamless coordination, Marcus caught Kara's crystalline gaze. The warriors' new formations pulsed with what Marcus now recognized as pride. You have shown us a new way, small doctor. Now we show others. The coming hours would test their growing cooperation, but Marcus knew something fundamental had shifted. The galaxy was learning that healing wasn't just about fixing what was broken, it was about growing stronger together. The warning came from Kara's, his crystal formations pulsing with urgent patterns Marcus had never seen before. The sovereign collective approaches, the Axiom warrior announced, striding into Marcus's office unannounced. They bring the Primarch's heir. Marcus looked up from his terminal, where he'd been reviewing treatment protocols for a particularly challenging case involving a Volarch energy degradation. The sovereign collective? I thought they considered human medicine to be primitive at best. They do, Karas confirmed, his new crystal formations shifting in what Marcus had learned to read as concern. But the air is dying. Their quantum core destabilizes, and their most advanced healers can do nothing. They come not by choice, but desperation. Before Marcus could respond, the station AI's voice filled the room. Priority alert. Sovereign collective vessel requesting emergency docking. Patient status critical. Quantum cascade failure imminent. Marcus was already moving, his mind racing through everything he knew about the Sovereign Collective, a species of quantum-based beings who existed simultaneously in multiple dimensional states. Their medical technology was centuries ahead of humanity's in most areas, which made their arrival both puzzling and concerning. The docking bay was a scene of barely controlled chaos. The collective vessel, a ship that seemed to exist partially out of phase with normal space, had somehow merged with the station's docking mechanisms. From its shimmering portal emerged a procession of beings that hurt to look at, their forms shifting between states of matter like disturbed water. In their midst, supported by fields of pure energy, was a smaller figure whose quantum structure was visibly deteriorating. The air, Marcus realized, watching as his medical scanners tried and failed to make sense of the readings. A tall figure stepped forward, its form momentarily stabilizing into something almost humanoid. "I am first speaker Ven," the translator rendered in tones of barely contained distress. "We require assistance." The words seemed to cause physical pain. Marcus stepped forward, professional mask firmly in place. "I'm Dr. Marcus Reed. Please, bring the patient to our quantum containment ward. We've modified it to—" "You do not understand," Ven interrupted, form flickering. "The air exists in 17 quantum states simultaneously. Your primitive facilities cannot possibly—" With respect, Marcus cut in, surprising himself with his firmness. "Every moment we spend discussing what can't be done is a moment your air gets worse. Let me try. What do you have to lose?" There was a tense moment where Ven's form became almost entirely energy, then resolved back. "Very well. But our healers must be present." "Of course," Marcus agreed, already leading the way. "I welcome their expertise. We'll need to work together on this." The quantum containment ward had been heavily modified since the station's early days, incorporating technology from half a dozen species. As they rushed to stabilize the air, Marcus found himself working alongside sovereign healers whose understanding of quantum mechanics made Earth's greatest scientists look like children playing with blocks. "The quantum cascade is accelerating," one healer announced, their form rippling with distress. "Traditional stabilization fields are failing." Marcus studied the readings, mind racing. "What if we're approaching this wrong?" he mused aloud. "We're trying to force all quantum states into alignment, but what if that's what's causing the cascade?" "Explain," Ven demanded, hovering nearby. "In human medicine, we sometimes have to work with the body's natural processes rather than against them. What if instead of forcing stability, we help the air's quantum states find their own balance?" The sovereign healers vibrated with what might have been skepticism or interest, their emotional states were still hard for Marcus to read. But Karas, who had stayed to observe, moved forward. "Like the crystal song," the warrior said. "When Dr. Reed helped me, he didn't force new patterns. He created conditions for natural healing." Marcus nodded. "Exactly. We can use your quantum fields not to constrain the air's states, but to support them. Let them settle naturally, like ripples in a pond finding their own level." "Primitive metaphors," a healer scoffed, but Ven raised an appendage for silence. "Proceed," the first speaker commanded. "But know that if the air dies, the consequences will be severe." What followed was the most intricate medical procedure Marcus had ever attempted. Working with the sovereign healers, he developed a way to create quantum support fields that adapted to each of the air's quantum states individually. It was like conducting 17 surgeries simultaneously, each in a different dimension. Hours passed. The air's quantum structure fluctuated wildly, then began to stabilize, not into a single state, but into a harmonious coalition of states. It was nothing like the rigid stability the sovereign healers had been trying to impose, but it was working. Finally, after what felt like days but had probably been about 14 hours, the heir's quantum signature stabilized completely. The young being rose from the medical platform, their form shifting through states with newfound grace. Fascinating, they said, their translator rendering childlike wonder. I can feel all my states in balance. It's beautiful. Ven's form had settled into something almost solid, a sign of strong emotion, Marcus had learned. You have done what we thought impossible, Dr. Reed. But more than that, you have taught us something about our own nature. That's what human medicine is about, Marcus replied, exhaustion making him philosophical. Sometimes healing isn't about forcing the body, or the quantum structure, to do what we think it should. It's about understanding its nature and working with it. The first speaker's form rippled in what might have been acknowledgement. Perhaps there is more your species can teach us. And perhaps there is much we can teach you in return. As the Sovereign Collective prepared to depart, Marcus found himself in his office with Karas, both of them watching the quantum ship disengage from the station. You have changed things again, small doctor, the warrior observed, crystals glimmering. The Sovereign Collective does not easily admit to learning from others. Yet today they learned. Marcus smiled tiredly. We all did. That's the point, isn't it? Every patient, every species, teaches us something new. We just have to be willing to learn. The station AI interrupted their conversation, multiple ships requesting docking clearance. It appears news of the heir's treatment has spread. Marcus looked at his empty coffee cup and sighed. Some days he wondered if he'd started something too big to control. But then he remembered the heir's wonder at their balanced states, the myriad healers' nodes pulsing with new understanding, Karas's strengthened crystal song. Well, he said, standing up, let's see what we can learn today. The medical amphitheater of Station Horizon had never been designed to hold such a diverse collection of species. Marcus stood at the podium, looking out over an audience that included everything from crystalline axiom warriors to quantum-phased sovereign collective observers, from energy-based Volarch to the distributed consciousness of the myriad. Welcome to the first session of the Interspecies Medical Exchange Program, he began, his words being translated into dozen different languages and communication formats simultaneously. Today marks the beginning of something unprecedented in galactic history. From his position near the entrance, Karas's crystals pulsed with what Marcus now recognized as pride. The Axiom Warrior had become not just an advocate for human medical techniques, but a key architect in bringing this program to life. Each of you brings centuries, sometimes millennia, of medical knowledge from your own species, Marcus continued. We're not here to replace that knowledge, but to combine it, to learn from each other, and to create something greater than the sum of its parts. A sovereign collective representative shimmed into partial phase. The collective has reservations. Our quantum medical techniques are highly advanced. What can we truly learn from younger species? Before Marcus could respond, a familiar pattern of nodes arranged itself in the air, the myriad healer who had first observed his treatment techniques months ago. We once thought as you did. Yet observe. The nodes rearranged themselves into a complex diagnostic pattern that Marcus recognized from recent collaborative treatments. This is a fusion of our neural networking and human diagnostic protocols. It is more efficient than either approach alone. The amphitheater erupted in multiple conversations, some verbal, some energetic, some quantum, some crystal harmonic. Marcus let it continue for a moment, watching species that had barely acknowledged each other's existence a few months ago engaging in passionate medical discourse. That's exactly why we're here, he said when the discussions quieted. Every species has developed unique approaches to healing based on their own biology and understanding. By sharing that knowledge, we can. The station AI's voice interrupted, emergency alert. Unidentified vessel approaching. Severe damage detected. Multiple species life signs, all critical. Marcus straightened. This is no longer a theoretical exercise. Anyone who wishes to observe or assist, follow me. This is what the exchange program is really about. The emergency response that followed would be talked about in medical circles across the galaxy for years to come. The damaged vessel turned out to be a refugee ship, carrying members of 6 different species, all injured when their ship passed through an unexpected spatial anomaly. In the organized chaos of the emergency bay, theory became practice. A Volarch energy healer worked alongside human doctors to stabilize a radiation-poisoned patient. Myriad nodes interfaced with Station Horizon's medical systems, enhancing diagnostic capabilities. Sovereign collective healers phased between dimensions to reach injuries that existed in multiple states of reality. And through it all, Marcus coordinated, delegated, and learned. He watched as centuries-old rivals set aside differences to save lives, as ancient healing traditions merged with new techniques in real time. The quantum discharge is affecting their neural patterns, a sovereign healer announced, their form flickering with concern as they worked on a critically injured myriad cluster. We can stabilize them, the myriad healer's nodes pulsed, but their quantum state. Allow me, Karas stepped forward, his crystal formations humming. The new harmonics Dr. Reed helped develop can shield against quantum interference. Marcus watched in amazement as Axiom crystal technology, human medical principles, and sovereign quantum healing techniques came together to save a myriad consciousness. It was everything he'd hoped for when proposing the exchange program, happening faster and more naturally than he'd dared dream. Hours later, with all patients stabilized and resting, Marcus found himself in his office with representatives from each major species involved in the emergency response. Today was instructive, the sovereign collective representative admitted, their forms settling into what Marcus had learned to read as thoughtful stability. The combination of techniques achieved results that would have been impossible for any one species alone. The myriad healers' nodes arranged themselves in a pattern of agreement. We have existed for 10,000 cycles, yet today we learned new ways of healing. Perhaps this is why the humans have advanced so quickly. They do not let age or tradition prevent them from seeking better ways. It is their adaptability that makes them unique, Karas added, crystals pulsing softly. They do not see differences as barriers, but as opportunities. Marcus listened to the discussion, feeling a profound sense of hope. The emergency had proved what he'd been arguing all along, that the future of medical science in the galaxy lay not in isolation, but in cooperation. This is just the beginning, he said finally. Today we saved lives by working together. Imagine what we could do with proper training, with purposeful collaboration, with Dr. Reed, the station AI interrupted, the first round of official exchange program applications has been processed. We have received requests from 27 species, including several that have never before shared their medical knowledge. Marcus smiled. Change was coming to galactic medicine, faster and more profoundly than anyone had anticipated. The barriers between species, between traditions, between different ways of understanding health and healing, they were all beginning to break down. Well, he said, looking at the diverse group of healers in his office, shall we get to work? We have a lot to learn from each other. As the various representatives began discussing training protocols and knowledge exchange frameworks, Marcus caught Karas's crystalline gaze. The warrior's new formations sparkled with what could only be described as hope. You have started something, small doctor, Karas said quietly. Something that will change the galaxy. Marcus nodded, thinking of all the lives they could save, all the knowledge they could share, all the bridges they could build. No, he corrected. We've started something. Together. 1 year after the founding of the Interspecies Medical Exchange Program, Medical Station Horizon had become unrecognizable. What had started as a humble human outpost had evolved into the galaxy's premier medical facility. The station had grown, with new wings and specialized treatment centers designed to accommodate every known species. But it wasn't the physical changes that mattered most, it was the transformation in how species interacted, how they approached healing, how they viewed each other. Marcus was reviewing the latest batch of exchange program applications when the first warning came. The station AI's voice carried an edge he'd never heard before, multiple spatial anomalies detected. Similar to the one that affected Kara's crystal formations, but exponentially larger. Before Marcus could respond, Kara's burst into his office, crystal formations pulsing with urgent patterns. The anomalies, they're spreading. Multiple ships reporting crystal song disruption, quantum destabilization, neural pattern interference. It's affecting everyone, all species, all technologies. The station's emergency channels erupted with distress calls. A sovereign collective vessel phasing uncontrollably between dimensions. A myriad ship with its neural network going haywire. An Axiom warship with failing crystal systems. And dozens more, all converging on the only place they believed could help, Station Horizon. How bad? Marcus asked, already moving toward the emergency bay. Unprecedented, the station AI reported. The anomalies are creating cascade failures across all known forms of biological and technological systems. Estimated arrival of first casualties in 3 minutes. Marcus hit the station-wide comm. This is Dr. Reed. We are facing a multi-species medical crisis. All exchange program participants, report to emergency stations. This is what we've trained for. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Healers of every species moved with practiced coordination, setting up specialized treatment areas. The sovereign collective representatives phased their equipment into optimal positions. Myriad nodes spread throughout the station's systems, enhancing their diagnostic capabilities. Axiom warriors positioned themselves to provide crystal harmonic shielding. The first wave of patients arrived in a chaos of different technologies and biologies, all failing in unique ways. Marcus found himself moving from crisis to crisis, watching as his trained teams put their combined knowledge to work. In one bay, a Volarch energy healer worked with a sovereign quantum specialist to stabilize a ship's crew suffering from dimensional displacement. In another, myriad nodes interfaced with human medical systems to repair neural damage in a dozen different species simultaneously. Kara's moved between teams, his new crystal formations, products of human medical innovation, somehow resistant to the anomalies, providing crucial stability where needed. The anomalies are still spreading, the station AI reported. More ships incoming. Station shields at 60% and dropping. Marcus gathered his core team, representatives from each major species in the exchange program. We need to understand what we're dealing with. These anomalies aren't just affecting one type of system or biology, they're disrupting everything. Not everything, the myriad healers' nodes pulsed thoughtfully. Observe Kara's formations. They remain stable. Because they're a hybrid, Marcus realized. A combination of Axiom crystal technology and human medical principles. What if that's the key? Not trying to resist the anomalies with pure forms of our technologies, but creating new combinations that can adapt. The sovereign representatives' form stabilized with interest. Like the air's treatment. Not forcing stability, but finding new balance. Exactly, Marcus nodded. We need to take everything we've learned about working together and apply it on a massive scale. Not just treating symptoms, but creating a new kind of protection that draws from all our knowledge. What followed was the most ambitious medical undertaking in galactic history. Under Marcus's coordination, teams of healers from every species began developing a revolutionary shield system. Axiom crystal harmonics provided the foundation, enhanced by sovereign quantum fields, networked through myriad consciousness patterns, powered by Volarch energy manipulation, all guided by human medical principles of adaptation and natural healing. Hours stretched into days. The station became a safe haven for hundreds of ships, its growing shield protecting them while teams of healers worked tirelessly to treat the injured. The exchange program proved its worth 1,000 times over as specialists from different species seamlessly combined their knowledge to save lives. Finally, after a week of non-stop crisis, the anomalies began to fade. The new shield technology had not only protected the station and its refugees but had somehow helped stabilize the affected regions of space. Marcus stood in the observation dome, watching as ships began departing, each carrying elements of the new hybrid technology back to their homeworlds. Kara's joined him, crystal formations glowing softly. "You knew," the warrior said. "From the very beginning, you knew this was possible." Marcus shook his head. "Not knew. Hoped. Hoped that if we could learn to work together, to combine our knowledge instead of holding it apart, we could achieve things none of us could do alone." "The galaxy will never be the same," Kara's observed. "The boundaries between our medicines, our technologies, our species, they're all changing." "For the better, I think," Marcus replied. "This crisis proved that we're stronger together than apart. Every life we saved was saved because we dared to learn from each other, to trust each other, to heal together." The station AI interrupted. "Dr. Reed, the Galactic Medical Council is requesting an emergency session. They want to discuss implementing the exchange program across all major medical facilities in known space." Marcus smiled. This was what he'd dreamed of, not just a single station where species could work together, but a galaxy-wide revolution in how they approached healing and cooperation. "Tell them we'll be happy to share what we've learned," he said. "After all, that's what healing is all about, sharing knowledge, breaking down barriers, and growing stronger together." As he looked out at the stars, Marcus thought about how far they'd come from that first day when a desperate Axiom warrior brought a dying brother to his medical bay. One act of trust, of reaching across species boundaries to help someone in need, had started a chain reaction that was still spreading across the galaxy. The future of medicine wouldn't belong to any one species or tradition. It would be built on the foundation of what they'd created here, the understanding that true healing knows no boundaries, that the best innovations come from cooperation, and that sometimes the greatest breakthroughs happen when we're willing to learn from each other. "Well," he said to Karas, "shall we get back to work? We've got a galaxy of healing to teach." The warrior's crystals pulsed with agreement. "Lead on, small doctor. Let on."